All right, so let's dive into this, shall we? Today we're heading over to Sierra Leone, and let me tell you, starts with this one Twitter thread, just one, but whoa boy, it's packed with some pretty wild accusations.
A single thread, huh? Color me intrigued. What's it all about?
So it's from this guy, Dr. Richard Conteh. He calls himself the Unifier. Pretty cool nickname, right?
The unifier. Interesting.
Yeah, and he's like a big deal in Sierra Leonean politics. Anyway, he's basically suggesting there's this shady connection going on between the government, a wanted European drug trafficker.
Hold on, a wanted drug trafficker.
Yeah, this guy, Just Leideckers, maybe you've heard of him,
Mm-hmm.
goes by Bully Shows.
Shows rings a bell, yeah. Big player in that whole European cocaine scene, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly, and the contest thread is hinting that this supposed connection is somehow tied to this UN appointment. It's Agnes Bio, President Bio's daughter.
UN appointment, huh? Now that is interesting.
Right. And this is for a position on the UN Security Council, no less.
Okay, the plot thickens. Gotta say, for our listeners who might not be totally up on UN stuff, the Security Council, that's a pretty big deal. They're the ones basically responsible for keeping the peace globally, making sure things don't go totally haywire on the international stage.
Yeah, keeping the world from falling apart, that's their gig.
Right. And the position Agnes Bio was appointed to, it's called an alternate representative. Think of it like a backup. But even as a backup, the position still comes with some diplomatic immunity.
Diplomatic immunity, so like she can't get in trouble for stuff.
Well, not exactly. It's a little more complicated than that. But yeah, it's basically meant to protect diplomats from being hassled or prosecuted unfairly. Prevents countries from just like arresting diplomats for political reasons or whatever.
Right, so they can do their job without fear of getting thrown in jail, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But, and this is crucial, it's definitely not meant to be a free pass for actual crimes. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. So where does all this leave Sierra Leone if Conteh's claims turn out to have some weight?
Well, that's where things get really dicey. Like, if these allegations blow up, the fallout for Sierra Leone could be huge.
Like how huge? What could actually happen?
Well, for starters, the UN Security Council, they've got some serious teeth. They can slap sanctions on countries they think are... We're not talking about a slap on the wrist here. We're talking embargoes, travel bans, the whole 9 yards.
Yikes, that doesn't sound good.
No, not at all. And then there's the diplomatic fallout, right? Sierra Leone's relationships with other countries could get seriously strained. It'd make it way harder for them to work with the international community, collaborate on stuff, trade, all that. And internally, man, this kind of scandal could just pour gasoline on any existing tensions within Sierra Leone. It could even, contribute to instability, make things really volatile.
So, not a pretty picture, for sure. And what about these calls for investigations? Conteh is calling for the UN Security Council to investigate, and Europol, too. Is that likely to happen, do you think?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
International investigations, they're not exactly a walk in the park. It's complicated, tons of moving parts. Ultimately, it all comes down to the evidence Conteh can actually put on the table. Is it solid? Is it credible? And then there's the political will, right? Are the big players going to be willing to actually pursue this thing, especially given how sensitive it is, all the high-level figures involved?
Right, because just accusing someone doesn't mean they're guilty.
Absolutely. It's innocent until proven guilty, even when we're talking about international relations and drug trafficking. So yeah, lots riding on what Conteh can actually prove and whether anyone's going to take him seriously enough to launch a full-blown investigation.
Man, it's a lot to wrap your head around. We've got this one source, this single Twitter thread, making some seriously heavy claims. It's like, are we looking at corruption at the very top, or is there something else going on here, something we're not seeing?
It's fascinating, though, isn't it? All the power dynamics at play. I mean, wow. Sierra Leone's government is in a really precarious position. This whole thing could tank their reputation on the world stage, make it almost impossible to govern effectively. And for the international community, this case could set a major precedent. It could totally change how these kinds of accusations get dealt with in the future.
That's a really good point. It's not just about Sierra Leone, it's about the whole system, the UN, the fight against drug trafficking, all of it. This story, it's got so many layers, and the potential consequences, man, they reach way beyond some Twitter thread.
It really does make you think, though, what can ordinary people do in Sierra Leone and globally to make sure things like this don't get swept under the rug? How can we make sure that people in power are held accountable? You know? How can we make it so that people aren't afraid to speak out against corruption? These are questions we all need to be asking.
That's a powerful point to end on. Thanks for breaking all this down.
My pleasure.
Hey,
You're always happy to dive into these complex issues.
for all of you listening, keep those questions in mind. This is a story that's just getting started. We'll keep you updated as things develop.